I don't see all the – if they're all fit and well, then chances are they won't be, or someone will be suspended or what have you. I think it's pretty cut and paste. I don't see what all the conjecture's about. Even with the fullback, I know Teddy's going good, but the other boy was outstanding in last year's series.
Hello, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus as we look at round 10 of the NRL. And guess what? Origin 1 is 3 weeks away today. You can put a calendar together and tick off the days if you like. I'm going to extract some Origin selection comment from Gus. At least I'm going to try, which is akin to extracting blood from a stone. But hey, I've got to try. A Bulldog young gun won't be making his debut for New South Wales in Origin 1. Jacob Preston banned for 4 weeks last night. Where to for David Fifita? Banished to the Queensland Cup last weekend. The Titans' $1 million back rower could be set to leave the club after he reversed his decision to do so last year. We'll preview a bumper round 10, which is, of course, Women in League round as well. But fresh from a world-class tipping performance of 7 from 8 in Magic Round, I welcome Phil Gould.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
Look, you're grinning like a Cheshire cat. If only you could punt.
Yeah.
7 from 8. And the outlier was the Panthers beating Brisbane.
Only missed the Panthers.
How about that?
The Panthers, yeah.
So the Shark, I'll put a little summary together. Shark too professional for Eel.
Yes.
Rooster outpointed Dolphin.
Killed him.
Knight bounced back to form and smashed the Rabbit.
Well, that was our big tip of the weekend. We said they'd bounce back.
Did they what? Warrior just held off Cowboy.
Good team, the Warriors.
Tigers back-to-back against the Dragons.
They'll make the 8. I told you that at the start of the year.
Bulldog thumps Titan.
Good win.
Raider prevails over Storm. Again after conceding a start. Again.
Yeah, they're fit. They're fast. They play for the 80 minutes. They never give up. And as I said on 100% footy the other night, that wins you a lot of games in this competition. There are teams that just can't do that. And the Raiders do. That's why they've got the record they got this year.
There was a period there back, maybe just after Cronk and co left Melbourne, but they were nearly impossible to beat when they led games. Like they had this ridiculous record of leading at halftime and going on to win. This is the Storm, that is.
Yeah.
So Canberra, they trailed 16-0 against Titans. They trailed, who they beat the week after that? Remind me, I'm trying to think.
Dolphins, they're down 28.
They did 28-10 at halftime.
28-10, yeah.
And they were down 12-0, 14-0?
They were down 28-10 and were never going to lose. That was the scary part of it. Like even watching that game, down 28-10, I never felt like they were going to lose. They were down 28-10.
I know. How could you say that?
Well, that was the feeling I had in the game. It was kind of like, it was the same the night that the Dolphins beat Melbourne Storm. Melbourne Storm led the Dolphins 16-2. And I turned to my family, we were all sitting in the lounge watching it, and I said, if Dolphins score next, they'll win this.
Yeah.
And they all look at me like, like I'm an idiot. And then I said, well, you watch. And it's exactly what happened.
And then
they look at me like I'm an idiot a lot.
Got 2 heads.
Yeah.
The outlier was the Panthers against the Broncos. Now, when they beat the Roosters a couple of weeks ago in the second half, everyone's going, they're back. I wasn't so sure about that. But I'm telling you, I reckon they're back now.
I reckon it was 10 minutes into that game, and I said to myself, I picked the wrong team. The 2 different teams have turned up here today. The Panthers this year, I mean, they've never really been embarrassed in a game this season. They've always been in the contest. They started the season with a great win over the Sharks over there in Las Vegas, and then sort of lost their way for the next 4 or 5 weeks, losing games. There are 2 performances this year that just remind you how good they are, and that's the Rooster game where they absolutely flogged them.
In the second half.
In the second half. But then the game against the Brisbane Broncos, that game was never in doubt. That was like Panthers had turned up and that they were never in doubt. And when they play like that, there's no one in this competition can live with them. When they play like that, when they get it right, so let's say they can put 10 or 11 of their grand final team on the field at any one time this season, which they've rarely done. They did, I think they had 10 of them on the weekend.
Well, they'll have 12 this week.
Well, Sorensen, Brian Tot was to come back.
Tot was back in this week.
Tot was back.
And Kenny's back.
Kenny's back, and Sorensen's to come back yet because he missed through suspension. So if they can get 12 or 13 of their grand final players on the field at any one time and perform like that, then there's still no one that can beat them.
The thing I think that stood out from my perspective, being up there and calling it, you would have seen in the first half, we put that graphic up on screen about possession. The Broncos had 8 sets of 6 in a row, and they didn't beat them. They didn't break them on their line.
Never looked like it.
And then they went up the other end and were able to score points. Oh, you said 100% footy on Monday night, and my ears pricked up. That was an Andrew Johns-like performance from Nathan Cleary. I was that close in the call, and I called the game with Joey. I was that close to making the comment, this is as close as I've ever seen to the way that he used to lead teams.
Yeah.
I didn't want to embarrass him, but it was just his determination, and it was his defence. I mean, that was the hallmark of John's game, wasn't it? He used to hit like a back rower.
As I said, it was Andrew Johns-esque. Like there are very few players in history that can win games the way that Andrew Johns used to win them. He could win them in any manner of fact. Andrew could go out and play in a dinner suit and win games. But there were also days where he would lead from the front physically, and I saw that in Origin in the hardest, part of our game. But what Nathan did on the weekend was a new level for him, like a new way for him to command a game, and he did it physically and he did it emotionally. Now Nathan's always been that real steady Eddie, responsible, meticulous, well-planned, well-thought-out, composed type performer that gives his team good service and good kicking game and good support play and good strategy. And he's a player that when he was younger, if they got behind on the scoreboard, he could sometimes struggle to make the impact from there. But as he's got older, he's learned new ways to impose himself on the game. That was just a different level on the weekend. It was a 10 out of 10 performance in any measure, and it was Andrew Johns-esque in the way that he just emotionally led that team. And the game was over very, very early. As you say, when they turned him away at that end of the field, but there were signs before that the Panthers were on their game. The way they were tackling, the way they were moving in the defence, the speed of their line, the speed of their kick chase, the physicality of their way, and what they were doing to the Broncos. Looking at the Broncos' body language, they didn't like it at all. You could just tell that they weren't enjoying that at all.
Which makes me ponder how much has changed in the Brisbane team from last year to this year. I mean, they have shown glimpses.
Yeah, they have shown
but they haven't put it together.
No, and I think we made the point on 100% footy. At round 9 this year, they're in exactly the same position. Exactly the same position. Even like for and against, it's uncanny. They are in exactly the same position they were this time last year. Now, from memory, this time last year, we probably saw signs that things were unravelling a little bit, and it did unravel. I don't know if we're seeing those signs this year, but, all eyes will be on them now for the rest of the season as they go forward. They've had some great periods of play this year, but they did this last year too. They had some good periods and then some poor periods, and then it'll be interesting to see how they go into Origin and come out the other side of Origin and how much of that takes a toll on itself. The two older halfbacks, how the season wears on for them as the year goes on. They've now got this conundrum with Ezra Mann being available and how they play that and bring him back into the fold. So they've got a lot of things to work on. But from a Panthers perspective, when they get it right, if they get their full team on the field, when they get it right in this competition, there is no one that can match that.
Even now?
Even now.
Are you with me in declaring they're back, baby?
Well, did they ever go away? Was it just lurking under the surface there? I kept saying that the effort was there. It just wasn't the execution. And they were lacking experience in the outside backs. They still do. They still lack experience in the outside backs. But Brian Toto will go a long way to helping that. They get their team back on the field. As you say, Nick Kenny and Sorensen to come back. And if Cleary can now see what he's capable of, what he's absolutely capable of, insofar as leadership and imposing himself physically and emotionally on a game, where he's always done it with calmness and control. He's always done it with that steady Eddie, reliable type persona. But if he suddenly morphs into that Andrew Johns, get out of our way, I'm taking charge here and, you've got no say in it type attitude, which he did on the weekend. I mean, that's Adam Reynolds and Ben Hunt that he destroyed on the weekend. They're not slouches. They're two of the best in the game. They've been in this game a long time. And the young Maestro just wiped the floor with them.
It's a sign of confidence in his body too. That's another positive
Absolutely,
sign.
yeah, absolutely. But he wiped the floor with those two elder statesmen. Absolutely wiped the floor with them.
Aside from the footy, what was your favourite old school jumper over the weekend? Because there were footy jumpers everywhere.
Footy jumpers everywhere.
In Brisbane?
Yeah, there were.
I saw a few Western Reds jumpers popping up.
Yeah, well, what were the Kentucky Fried Chicken ones? What were they?
Don't know.
The big ones with Colonel Sanders on the front. Is that some sort of Queensland
Sounds like a
Cup?
marketing campaign to me.
Is that a Queensland Cup? Is there a team in the
Oh,
Queensland?
Dolphins. It's the Dolphins one.
Dolphins.
It's a Dolphins retro jersey.
Dolphins retro jersey. There's a lot of people walking around the streets in Brisbane with big cars. Why is Colonel Sanders
That's
getting
a clever,
such a mention?
clever marketing ploy.
Yeah.
Old school Arthur Beetson style Redcliffe jumper. Yes, I saw a couple of Western Reds jerseys with the Super League emblem. Well, they're back. They're relevant.
I'll tell you what I did see, and I see it every year at Magic here. I saw a lot of drunk people. I saw a lot of drunk people, and I saw a lot of hungover people.
Yeah. So
some hungover people very close to us, actually.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was just going to say, I got there. I landed at Suncorp Stadium at 2:00 on Sunday in a taxi, and I was on a plane at 7:00 out of there. Yeah. And there had been some of our team had a good campaign.
When Queensland decides to have a drink, they don't muck around.
Can I tell you, someone you're particularly close to and coached for the most of his career had a good weekend. Came out of retirement, I believe.
I tuned into the Sunday footy show and I thought, I've seen that look before. I've seen that look before.
He wasn't well.
No.
In fact, he was so unwell that he thought it was Peter Basaltis calling the game, but it was me.
I think he's very much out of practice. It's not in his makeup these days to be able to handle that.
No. Dear, oh, dear, oh.
So the answer to my first question is pretty obvious. Magic Round stays in Brisbane. No.
No.
Well, why has it always got to be in Brisbane?
Because it's all about Queensland.
I'm a Sydney boy, baby. I think Magic Round would go great in Sydney. I really do. I've said this every year. Why do you keep bringing this up?
Because
Brisbane's had their turn. Why has it got to be all about Queensland?
Send it to Vegas.
Why is it? Yeah, well, I'm happy with Vegas.
All the clubs in Vegas.
What could possibly go wrong? Crikey, enough goes wrong in Brisbane. Vegas.
It's a good spot for it.
It is a good spot. And
the weather's good, that's why.
Well, what's handy about Brisbane is the location of the ground to the city itself.
Very true.
Yeah, and that makes it easy. It's walking distance and it's all very, very convenient and everyone's sort of in the one place where makes it a little bit difficult because we don't have that sort of precinct here readily available in Sydney. You would probably, the closest we'd have is probably Parramatta, but the stadium's not really big enough for that.
You play it at Allianz.
Yeah, you could play it at Allianz, but then again, it's not walking distance to everything, is it?
But there's a great light rail there now. I should say
I'd love to have one in Sydney because there are 9 home clubs in Sydney. I think you'd fill out Acor every weekend. I think you get 60 or 70,000, 80,000 to the games. It's you got 9 clubs in Sydney. That's 9 supporter bases. Why wouldn't we reward our fans with the opportunity to go along to a Magic? Not all of them can afford to jump on a plane and go to Brisbane for the weekend and do all that. But that's why I would like to see it in Sydney to reward our fans, to reward the fans of the clubs down here in New South Wales.
There's a women's Magic Round in Newcastle this year.
Is there?
I reckon Newcastle will be a good spot for it. I love Newcastle.
Yeah, I don't know about not for a men's Magic Round.
Well, staying in Brisbane for the meantime.
I would love to see one in Sydney, but Brisbane's good. It's a great concept. It's a lot of fun. All the fans have fun. You get to meet our real fans. You get to see the punters. If you walk out amongst them, you find out what our fans are really like.
Real blue collar.
What they like and what they don't like. They're not fools. Our fans are not fools.
They're nice to you this year?
Don't ever take them for fools.
Were they good? They were good to you?
Fans are always good to me.
Jemima Taufa's the best player in the women's game.
She's my favourite player in the women's game. Always has been. My favourite player. When the women's game first started, and when I first started commentating on the women's game, she was the one that grabbed my eye because of her sheer work ethic, her workload, and her physicality on the field. And it really opened my eyes to the commitment level and the toughness of these women that had chosen to play this sport. And I met her shortly after that. She came out to Panthers to do a presentation for I think the first ever Tasha Gale competition. Panthers won the competition out there many years ago. And as part of our presentation night, we got Semaima Taufa to come out and present the award. Mm-hmm. And when I got there on the night, I'd never met her. And here's this beautiful young girl sitting there. She's beautifully dressed. She's all dolled up for the night. And she spoke so quietly and she was so polite. And she was so... I said, who's that? He said, that's Semaima Taufa. I said, the front rower in the New South Wales side. I couldn't get over it. I just couldn't get over it, and I've watched her ever since, and she is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Then she ran over, picked you up, dumped into the ground. Said, get that into your guts.
She could probably do that.
She's a star. She missed last year's series and was probably the difference.
She had the sweetest little voice and the sweetest smile, and and you thought that butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. And then I watched her play. My God, she tackled the goalposts. She's phenomenal. She's my favourite player.
That reminds me, was Petro Sivanasiva on Turn It Up on Sunday, on the Sunday Footy Show?
I think
he was. I think was he? Was it last week? But the boys were talking about how the nicest man on the face of the planet.
Petro, yeah.
But bloody hell on the field.
Yeah. He saved my life recently, Petro.
What?
Well, I went to Fiji. I went to Fiji because we got an involvement with the Fiji Silk Tails, and I went across there when Fiji were playing in the games. When was it? At the back end of last year, I think. Anyway, as it would, I had to fly into Nadi, and then I had to get a plane to Suva, right? And you get in this little plane, and it was at night, and I wasn't going to land in Suva till 10:30 at night, right? And then they had me a hire car to drive to the hotel, right, in Suva. I've never been there in my life. And when I get to Suva Airport, it's very, very small, and it's in the middle of nowhere, like comparatively, and it's pitch black dark, and I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to find this hotel? There's no GPS. I can't look up the GPS, and I'm thinking, where do I get this car? And I can't find my way around the airport. And then all of a sudden around the corner comes Petro.
What?
I said, hello, mate, how you going? He said, I'm here to take you to the hotel. And I said, thank God for that. I said, because when I was landing, I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to get to this hotel? And where would I go?
Was he the last person in the world you expected to see at Super Airport at 10:30?
He virtually just come out of the woodwork. I've got a photo on my phone. He virtually just come out of the woodwork and said, hello, mate, how are you? And I'll see if I can find it.
I feel like watching a Jason Bourne film.
And he had the lady there that runs the Silk Tails, and they put, what are those welcoming things around you? Where's it?
Like the floral arrangement around
There's me and Petro at the airport.
He's just turned up out of nowhere.
He's just turned up out of nowhere. There he is. He's
a beauty.
So there's Petro and I at the airport with the floral thing that she made for me to welcome me to the thing there. So
that's handmade, is it? Lovely.
Beautiful, handmade. I've got it at home. And so he gets the hire car that I'd got for the week, right, to be around the Silk Tails, which he kept for the whole week. I didn't drive. I said, I'm not driving it. But halfway to where we were going, and we're going down the darkest, not streets, roads, like darkest dirt tracks, rails, like we're going down, and I'm thinking, how the hell will I have found this? And he just laughed. He said, no, you would never have found it. I said, how did you know I was coming? He said, no, they told me you were coming. I figured.
He knows everything.
I said, what time are you getting in? He said, oh, he's getting in about 10:30 at night. And he said, he'll never get there. And it was about 40 minutes, and it was like, I would never have gone it. We went through villages, we went through areas where there's no street lights. And I'm thinking, whoever booked me to go here? I said, what made you think I was going to find my way to the hotel?
Sorry, you were going to drive the hire car yourself.
That
I thought you meant there was a bloke driving it.
No, that was the plan.
Oh.
No, I was in a Hertz rent-a-car. So
You still wouldn't be back.
So they got me the car and the keys, and Petro said, "I'll drive it." I said, "It's safer for me to drive in," and it was. And so I didn't drive it the whole week. So I gave Petro the car, and he used the car the whole week.
You'd be the safest man in Fiji with Petro driving you around.
Oh yeah, but there's no
That's
way.
the funniest thing I've ever heard.
There's no way in the
Petro's
world.
emerged out of the jungle.
I'm standing there waiting for my bag, and I'm thinking, where am I? I'm trying to look up on my phone where this hotel is and how I'm going to get there. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get there? And I'm thinking, where do I get the car from? And I looked out, like it was just like one of them small airports you see in the country, the backwoods country of New South Wales, way out the back somewhere. And it was just a small little airport, and it was pitch black night outside. There wasn't a street light on. And he said, "No, I'm here to take you." He saved my life.
What a legend.
I could have ended up anywhere. I would have had to sleep at the airport until daytime. There's no way in the world I was going out at night. No way in the world. And we got to this beautiful hotel right on the water. It was lovely. Had a lovely week there. Petro's involved with the Silktails.
He was the big push to get them in the comp.
They've won 3 games this year, the Silktails. Being
Flying.
associated with the Bulldogs. Going good.
You're all going good. That's too good.
Petro, just come out of nowhere.
Jaden Sewer's bomb try at the weekend was the worst ever. Poor bloke. What happened?
Well, in living...
What happened?
In living... Not only that...
They ran away. They're up the other end and scored.
Not only that, they picked it up and ran 110 metres and scored under the post.
What happened?
Well, he lost the ball. Ball slipped out of his hands.
See, Jordan writes these questions. I can think of one worse.
What's that?
Do you remember the Russell Richardson one at Shark Park that night?
Oh, I've seen worse than that.
Have you?
Yeah, I've seen worse than that. Well, it's not fair because the people that it happens to, they don't mean it. They're just accidents. But Jaden Sewer even had a smile on his face that he was going to put the ball down because he was going in for a try.
Oh, man.
Which would have been crucial at that time too. It would have got them back in the contest. Although I think the Tigers were always going better, but they found a number of ways to shoot themselves in the foot the other night, the Dragons, didn't they?
Well, they've done it all year.
Yeah.
The coach has blown up a few times about it.
But I don't. When he dropped it, I went, "Oh no!" And then the cameras kind of hadn't picked it up straight away, and all of a sudden we see Jareem Buller racing downfield. He was already over the halfway line. And I said, "Oh no, is this play on? Is this play on?" Like, adding insult to injury, crikey.
Well, they lost by 6. That's the side of the game.
I don't think it was as close as that. But at the end of the day, that was, I felt very, very sorry for him. And, what can you do? Your teammates, your coach, there's nothing you can say. He didn't mean it. It just happened. The slippery ball, it just came out of his hands.
Last question. Kyo Weeks is the new Billy Slater.
No. There's only one Billy Slater, mate. Only one Billy Slater. But Kyle Weeks is an extremely talented young player. There was always a rap on him. It was a good pickup by the Canberra Raiders.
It was a good impersonation of Billy on the weekend.
Yeah, well, that was special, wasn't it? Particularly at that time. And the absolute no fear, no hesitation approach to, getting through the line and looking at Pappenhausen and the preparedness to chip over his head, regather and score was phenomenal. That shows real talent. And he's done that a couple of times. He's made some really extraordinary passages of play. I'm not saying that maybe down the track he is one day remembered as a Billy Slater. He's very, very early in his career, but there was only one Billy Slater, baby. There was nothing like Billy Slater before, during or after.
I was being facetious.
I find it very, very hard to imagine anyone who would be like Billy Slater.
We got some breaking news.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Smith is set to join South Sydney effective immediately.
Wow.
This has been bubbling along for a little while, and I suppose when he signed that deal to go next year, there was talk that this may happen, but it would appear that the clubs have reached an agreement in the last 48 hours, and Smith, who's 6 weeks away from a return from an ACL, will head to South Sydney, and Souths are going to pay $180,000. Now, would that be a transfer fee or would that be part of his salary back to the Roosters for the year?
What, as compensation?
Yes. Perhaps they're compensating for part of his salary that they've already paid.
Right. And
Under the terms, South will have to pay around $180,000 to secure Smith for the rest of the year.
Or is that just the remainder of his contract value for the rest of the year?
I'm not sure. I was
So
hoping you'd clear that up.
So when are you saying he joins them effective immediately now?
Yeah.
So where are we at? May, June, July, August, September, October. So 6 months. So no, 180 wouldn't cover 6 months of his salary.
So maybe they're covering a portion of it?
So, well, 180,000 would only cover a couple of months of his salary, I'd imagine.
You can't pay transfer fees, can you?
Yeah, you can pay transfer fees. You can. There are all sorts of deals that can be done. The 180,000 might be compensation on, the football that he's missed from the Roosters. They want a compensation for the football he's missed. Which, where are we? Round 10? Yeah, 180,000 might cover the football that he hasn't played for the Roosters this year because of his injury. Maybe they take over his rehabilitation straight away. I find that interesting, though. It's certainly good for South Sydney to have him this year. I find that interesting, though, because they're tracking all right, the Roosters. You can see them starting to improve. Those younger fellas are finding their feet. A stellar performance on the weekend at the Magic Round. And with the prospect of Sam Walker coming back, they think he'll be back in the next few weeks. And then Brandon Smith, I mean, there's still a chance of playing finals football, and having those two fellas around in September would have been mightily handy for them. So that's
decided they don't need Smith.
Well, possibly. But, that's an interesting one. That's good for the Rabbitoh, I suppose. Yeah.
So back in 6 weeks' time, it's a boost for South. They've been savaged by injury and suspension and various things this year, particularly in the middle forward department. And I don't think there's any doubt. I think Wayne said as much. He's going to go there and reprise the role he played at Melbourne as a middle ruck forward, not dummy half.
I've never ever seen him as a full-time hooker. He's effective out of dummy half during the game as a lock forward. Like his tag team stuff with Harry Grant was a big part of the Melbourne Storm attack. I've never seen him as a full-time 80-minute dummy half. I don't think his skill set's good enough. Rugged defender and great ball runner, but no, I never saw him as a dummy half. And I was surprised if the Roosters bought him as a dummy half. Well, they must have because they let a couple of hookers go.
Yeah, Sam Verrills.
Yeah. I never saw him as a dummy half. So if South Sydney want to play him, well, where would they play him? I mean, Cameron Murray's going to come back next year. He's their lock forward. Maybe they're going to play Cameron Murray on an edge. He's pretty versatile. I don't know. Anyway, that's up to Wayne Bennett. I'm sure he's got it worked out.
He'll play lock until Murray comes back.
That's interesting because I just feel like the Roosters are tracking all right. They're kind of keeping pace. They're winning enough games to keep themselves in contention. And if they can negative split, if they can have a better second half of the year than the first half of the year, they can play finals football. And then your Brandon Smith and your Sam Walker become really valuable to you at that stage of the year. But they're tracking all right, the Roosters. So as soon as I put all those young blokes in, trusted the younger fellas and give them a few games under their belt, forget about what it looks like now too. Imagine what it's going to look like in a couple of years' time when they've got 40 games under their belt.
The other one is Dom Young has been given permission to leave the club immediately.
Yes, that's been bubbling away for a while.
They're saying he might end up back at Newcastle, who never really wanted to lose him in the first place. And undoubtedly he played better football at Newcastle, although he did have a good try-scoring season last year. But he's a skillful player, Dom Young. He's done some amazing things, particularly for Newcastle, but he hasn't been able to replicate that at the Roosters.
He's a talent.
Yeah.
He's a talent. Dom Young thinks he's a centre. He would prefer to play in the centres. He's never really enjoyed playing on the wing.
Right.
I don't think he likes fielding the high kicks. I don't think he likes to be exposed defensively out there on the edge with the decisions that they've got to make. I don't know the high work rate of wingers these days. He feels like it dulls him a little bit in some of the other things that he can do. And being such a tall fellow with long levers and all that, he felt that he could feed wingers rather than be running onto the ball. He's obviously a great athlete. He can run and he can score tries and he scores them in all manner of ways and from all sorts of distances. But he himself has always wanted to play centre.
Right.
That's what he's always wanted to do, is play centre. And I'll be surprised that if he's now on, well, he is on the market, he's been shopped around, but I would imagine, I can't even remember who manages him, I would imagine they might be looking for somewhere where he could have a positional change and play centre.
Okay.
That's a tip for you, isn't it?
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Keep my finger on the pulse sometimes, Matthew.
Do you think he's a centre?
I'd be interested to see him play there, yeah. I'd be interested to see him play there because probably the things that he's been exposed playing on the wing at the Roosters is why they're prepared to let him go, on the money that he's on and what he's provided for them. And
defensively, you mean?
Defence, attack, look, I don't think he enjoys playing on the wing. Well, I know he doesn't enjoy all aspects of playing on the wing. As a footballer, you'll play wherever you pick. He's not whinging about it. He doesn't complain about it.
He scored some sizzling tries on the wing.
Because he's an athlete. He's an athlete. He's an absolute athlete. And that's where he first got put. He's an athlete. There are plenty of blokes that have made careers out of being a winger that didn't think they were wingers. Like I said to you, every year when they put out the players available, there's no wingers on the list. They're all centre fullback utilities. But I know that he thinks he's a centre or he wants to play in the centres.
Okay.
So
you don't think it's as cut and dry that he'll just go back to Newcastle and play on the wing?
No.
Because he's not going to play in the centres there.
I'm sure. Who are their centres?
Gagai and Best.
Gagai and Best, yeah. Well, yeah.
Because Gagai goes to the wing.
Yeah. I'll be surprised if he's not having conversations around playing centre somewhere or that he's desired to play centre somewhere. I would be surprised he's given up on that ambition anyway because he was fairly strong about it.
Do you know he's having discussions about playing centre somewhere?
No, I don't.
Oh, right.
No, I first spoke to Dominic Young years ago.
Did you?
Years ago.
Before he came out here?
Yeah, spoke to his family. Spoke about bringing his brother out from England. Yeah. So years ago. And it was his desire then to be a centre.
Okay.
That's what he thought was his best position. He's been pigeonholed on the wing because of his athleticism and the teams he played in, and they're playing with Gagai and Best and those sort of blokes. And they've got young fellas now come, Billy Smith and Robert Toyer. And I don't know whether he would have even had that conversation with the Roosters when he signed with the Roosters. I don't know. But I know that I had a conversation with him, and that was his desire and that was his ambition, and that's where he thought he would be best served as playing as a winger. And maybe even one day as a back rower. That was his kind of where he thought his career path would go. But certainly as a centre.
That's very good.
It'd be interesting to see what he does. He may well just go back to Newcastle and play on the wing. Probably comfortable for him. But I know he had a desire to play in the centres.
Panthers could use a centre.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not on that money though.
Who have they got at the moment? Tungor?
Well, they're playing Luke Garner there.
Luke Garner.
They've moved Jenkins to the bench this week. Well, Casey McLean's been dropped. What about David Fifita? Now, this is strange. There's obviously something clear. He's admitted there's something going on underneath the surface. He's got an ankle issue, so he's out indefinitely, in inverted commas, but he was dropped to Ipswich on the weekend. I think he made 80 running metres or something. But what Danny White had to say on 100% footy on Monday is, there's issues under the surface. This is a bloke, he's on $1 million a year, and they convinced him to reverse his decision last year, and it would seem inevitable he's going to leave the club this year. He's a free agent November 1.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. I think David Fifita needs to sit down and look at exactly where his career is right at the moment. Everything that's gone before it. You can't change what's gone before it. And it's a perfect example. I mean, David Fifita hit the scene with the Broncos. And he got a massive money offer to go to the Gold Coast Titans, which I said at the time was an irresponsible purchase. And put a lot of pressure on the rest of the competition and player values, etc. It was an irresponsible contract at the time, and I stand by that. And I don't think it's done David Fifita any good whatsoever. I don't think it's done his development any good. I don't think it's done the scrutiny on his performance is any good. He still had a long way to go and a lot to learn, despite his great physical attributes. He was genetically gifted, and he's got obviously strong physical attributes, and he would have been an absolute dynamo in age group football, and then he moved into senior football. He had an immediate impact. I can remember in his early years, despite being a kid, at the Broncos, we would do Broncos games, and I'd just say, give it to the big kid, give it to the big kid, and he would just run in 50-metre tries. They just couldn't lay a hand on him, he couldn't tackle him. And he played for Australia at a young age, and then they made this massive offer to get him to the Gold Coast.
I think it was the richest deal ever at the time, from memory.
Well,
like 1.2 a year or something.
It was an irresponsible deal, and that's I speak openly about that.
Yeah,
and I criticised it at the time. Now, good luck to him. He got the money. I don't begrudge anyone getting the money and what have you. And it was an offer too good to refuse. He had to take it. Right? He had to take it. That money doesn't come along. You only get those sort of things. Some people never see that sort of money, but
it's a little bit like you've been saying about paying big money for young players. It hasn't helped him in the long term.
It doesn't help them. It's a detriment to them. It really is, and they need to be carefully managed, and they need to understand that it's not about the money in those formative years. It's about your development and being. And what happens too with clubs when you start, I've seen this with coaches and I've seen this with teams, not just ones that I've been involved with, but I've seen it a number of times. They'll buy a big money player or they'll put a player on big money, and you know what happens? They stop coaching them because they think that they're on that money, they don't need to be coached, or they still don't need to be developed. The expectations are too great. The scrutiny's too huge. The disappointments are far greater because you're paying them more money. And what they start doing is looking at their salary and not looking at actually how to help them or what their football needs. And and there is also the reverse effect too, that the player on that sort of money and getting that sort of notoriety and that sort of reputation is sometimes uncoachable. I'm not saying that about David Fifita. I don't know David Fifita, so I'm not saying that about David Fifita. But sometimes, players do get ahead of themselves and they do become a bit uncoachable and unapproachable about their football, and they deal with their stress in different ways and their own anxieties and their own, So... but for David Fifita, I think it's a perfect case that it has not helped his development as a professional footballer.
He's gone backwards.
Well, no, he hasn't gone backwards, but it hasn't helped his development. He hasn't gone forwards, right? He hasn't gone forwards. When he was doing all those great things at the Broncos as a teenager on little money, right, he still had those flaws. Like we all saw that he still had a lot of developing to do, which is why I figured that the money was irresponsible, because he still had a lot of development to do. And my fear was when you pay someone that money, it puts pressure on everyone else in the competition. If you're going to pay a David Fifita that, what are these players worth? What's that player worth? It makes it very, very difficult for everybody. And it's, sometimes those deals come from desperation of clubs and emotional decisions by clubs.
Yeah.
The market is set by the emotions and the desperation of the lower teams. All right, that happens in our market a lot, right? Because the competition for players is so fierce and because the supply of elite talent is sometimes scarce, particularly in important positions. But I feared that it wasn't going to help David Fifita, because David Fifita still had a lot to learn as a professional rugby league footballer. Would he learn it, or would he be coached in what he needed, given that now he had all this money and all this expectation? When you pay a player like that at that stage of his career, are you just expecting him to put the ball under his arm and keep scoring 50-metre tries? That's not going to happen. You know why? Because we've got 16 other pretty smart coaches out there who work it out very, very quickly, that if they can tire him out in this manner, then that stuff doesn't happen. Or they can work out their defensive strategy that he doesn't get the space and the time. And I just don't think he's ever really truly been developed. So here we are now. Forget everything that's happened. How old is David Fifita?
25.
He's 25 years of age. His career should be just starting, right? This should be the start of his career. This is where his career really starts to take off. How many first grade games has he played? 100
or so? I'll have a look.
120, 130 first grade games. This is where his career is about to take off. And what's he doing? He's playing for Ipswich. All right? But now
132 games.
Yeah, this is where his career is just taking off. This is where, he should have learnt his trade. He should have learnt how to train, act, eat, drink, sleep, play, football IQ, football knowledge, how to be a great team member, how to be a valuable team member, how to be a valuable support to his teammates. This is where his development has probably lacked. And I don't think that the money and the expectation has helped him with that, right? I think he's a highly talented footballer. I think he's got great things in his game that would be advantageous to everybody. But the glitches in his game, the other stuff, has never been resolved.
What are his glitches?
I'm not going to go into that. It's never been resolved. It's never, ever been resolved. He's been a target for other coaches, right, who have worked him out very, very quickly. There are times where he puts the ball under his arm and you can't stop him. It's as simple as that. He's strong and fast and he's evasive and, he's genetically blessed, all right? But there's a hell of a lot more to football than just putting the ball under your arm and carrying the ball and scoring tries. A hell of a lot more to football. And you've got to look for a hell of a lot more in your professional footballer than just that before you go paying them that amount of money. And that was my fear at the time.
So if he's to relaunch his career, which still has a long time ahead of it if he wants to get it right.
So obviously he's earned a lot of money up to this stage in the career. I'd say he's earned more up until the age of 25 as most 25-year-old footballers have ever done. How many footballers have been on that sort of money at this stage of their career for as long as he has? He needs to sit and look at it and say, all right, well, how do I become a content 35-year-old footballer retiring with a body of work behind me that I can be proud of? How does my career get to where all that early potential said it should have got? How can I be a long-term representative class, state of origin class, high-performing, winning NRL player that's an asset to my club? At 35, that's when I want to retire. That's what I want on my resume.
That's assuming he does.
That's at 10 years. Well, yeah, but I would say inwardly there's that motivation. I just don't think anyone has ever extracted it from him. I don't think anyone has ever had that conversation with him. I highly doubt that and I'm not saying the people that have coached him have done the wrong thing. I'm just saying that I just don't know. I don't think his career to this point has got him to where he should be at this stage of his career. And so if he wants to retire at 34, 35 years of age and he wants that on his resume, right? That's what I want to be remembered for. There's still 10 years to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a long time in front of him. If he can take a couple of years out of his life and put himself in a good system and put himself with good people and take the pressure off his personal performance in winning games for his team, right? Which the only way he knows how to win games for his team is to put his ball under the arm, bump people out of the way and score tries. He thinks that's rugby league. That's how he thinks he's going to impact his team. That's how he thinks as being a good footballer. That's what he sees as being his job. When his job is 99% other things, just that. That's the bonus in his makeup. That's the luxury. That's the cream on top. There's the other stuff that you've got to do to be a valuable professional footballer that, quite frankly, he just doesn't do. Now,
Perhaps he doesn't understand.
Whether he has been made aware of it and just doesn't want to do it, well, that's something he needs to come to terms with. If he hasn't been held to account on that because of his money and because of what he is, I don't know. I've never met David Fifita. I don't know. I'm just looking outside as a fan of what he could do as a teenage kid, but then seeing it not evolve over a period of time, and I can look at it and say, well, the contracts and the money and the expectation has had a lot to do with that. In my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
So, whoever's handling David Fifita, whoever's looking after his next decision, or David Fifita himself, I think he needs time out, sit down, review what's happened, set some goals and say, well, this is where I want to be. This is at the end of my career, this is what I want people to say about me, or this is what I want to say about myself. Forget about what other people think. Who gives a rat's what other people think? When I get to the end of my career and it's over, what do I want to feel about myself? How am I going to feel content about my career? Now, if it's the 2 big houses and the fast cars and the wife and the kids and all that sort of thing, well, that's good on you. If that's what you want, go and get it. If you want the holidays and the money and great. If that turns you on, do that. But if you actually want to be content in your football career, then you need to be realistic and sit down, be honest in self-appraisal, and start to set some goals and say, well, this is how I want to be remembered. This is how I want to remember my career. This is what I want to be proud of when it's over. Who can help me do that? Where can I make that happen? And maybe he needs to take a real backward step for a couple of years and go somewhere and put himself in a system or put himself in an environment where he's away from that big kid in the team responsible for scoring tries and winning them games, and put himself in a system where he's not the main man, where he has to work hard to get his position, where he has to work hard on the other aspects of the game, where he does become a truly professional footballer that's a valuable team member and that can be relied upon in all situations, with and without the ball, at both ends of the field. That's what you're looking for when you're buying a professional footballer. He needs to go back and reset. Now, I mightn't do that. If he puts himself on the market or go, there'll be no shortage of suitors. There'll be plenty of people put their hand up and want to give it to him. And what will they want to do? They'll get him in there, they'll put him in the background, they'll say, throw him the ball, score a try.
Does the money he's on at the moment preclude clubs, though? Like, how does it, if someone wanted to take him off the Titans, there's a fair whack, isn't there? Because he's entitled to his money. He signed a long-term contract.
All contracts are negotiable. The issue you would have is with salary cap auditors and value and what have you, but how long has he signed with the Gold Coast? What was the last deal he did? Because I think he got a pay rise to take that clause out about the Justin Holbrook.
I'm confused. But
it was both he and Tino had clauses about the coach clauses.
Tino had he got the 10-year deal. Tino, I don't think. I don't know.
No, I think. I don't know. But if it's become and maybe this is the process that Des is putting him through now. Go back to New South Wales Cup, reset, go back, learn what it is to be a professional footballer and be a valuable team member. All right? Mm-hmm. Go back and do it there. And when you go back to New South Wales Cup, and as it looked, it probably didn't have an impact on the weekend, and he realises, well, I still got a lot to learn. I do have to get better. I do have to get better at what I'm doing. Maybe the Gold Coast bring him back in 6 weeks' time, 6 months' time.
Well, his ankle's busted, so I don't know where that leaves him.
Well, okay, we've got to get your injury right. But, it'll be a very, very interesting situation because he was going to leave, he was going to go to the Roosters, and then
that was so weird.
He stayed at the Gold Coast, and the Gold Coast seemed very happy to have him, and now we've got this situation where he's been dropped. He's back in Queensland Cup. He's saying that there's more behind it, and I've got an ankle injury and I'm out, and he's going to need some help. He's going to need a mentor there or someone to sit down and say, David, we need to be a little bit honest here and work out where your next 10 years is going to be, if that's in fact what you want to do.
All right.
We've got all too heavy, was it?
I thought it was very good. Very, very good.
I'm on his side. I'm cheering for him. I want him to be a success.
Didn't sound at all like a sales pitch to me.
No. No.
I'm going to try and draw you on some forward selections. Now, I know the medical hasn't been conducted and all that. So just work with me here.
Tell me this. Why is everyone...
Because people love it.
Why is everyone so eager to keep picking Origin
Because
teams?
they love it.
But you absolutely know that this is going to vanish into the ether and you're never going to get the team that you selected.
Because you've done it professionally at times in your life and everyone else wishes they had the chance. So this is why.
Right.
So you can say yes or no.
Well, why don't I ask you if you want to do it?
Because no one gives a shit. So Payne Haas is a lock. Agree?
Yes.
Liam Martin's a lock.
Yes.
And Isaiah Yeo is a lock.
He is a lock.
He's a lock at lock. Now, left back row. Angus Crichton was player of the series last year.
He was.
But Hudson Young, if he hasn't been the best player in the comp, he's in the top handful.
Been brilliant.
Do you have a thought there?
Either or. There's one there and there's one on the bench.
Yep. Okay, both there.
Both there.
on the side. If you were picking the team today, would Terrell May be your other prop?
He would be in the squad.
Because he's an 80-minute player. That's what you love.
Yeah.
Yep.
He would be in the squad.
Do you have a thought on the other starting? You're not fussed about the starting prop? Mitch Barnett debuted game 3 last year. He's going good.
Barnett is one I really like.
Yeah. What about? It's hard on Jake Trbojevic.
And I know too that Liam Martin can play front row during the course of the game. He doesn't have to start there. He's the right edge back rower for Australia, and he's made a real good fist of it. But Liam Martin can play in the middle for extended minutes. So I think you only need the 2 starting front rowers and 1 genuine front rower on the bench, because Liam Martin can fill that position. So too can Angus Crichton if push comes to shove. But I think Angus Crichton has the ability to play on the right side of the field as well as the left. So that's why I would probably start with Hudson Young and have Angus on the bench as a coverage for Hudson Young, or as to play him more on the right side of the field. A player that would have come under strong consideration for me is the Bulldog Jacob Preston, who's just been suspended, and he won't be available. But for me, taking into account experience, form, their 80-minute constitution, they're the players that I'd be looking at right at the moment.
Okay. Well, I think there was a leak in the media a couple of days ago confirming Spencer Leniu is going to be there again.
Yeah. I like Spencer, but I don't always buy the idea that you need a 10-minute impact player off the bench in Origin, because 2 HIAs and a sin bin or a send-off, and the complexion of your team changes dramatically straight away. And Spencer Leniu has never, at any stage of his career, shown us that he can be a 70 or 80-minute performer at club level.
Well, he rarely starts.
Let alone at Origin level. All right, so as a coach, I don't think I would leave myself open to that. You can take the gamble, and it was a successful gamble at times last year, because he can come off and he can rustle a few feathers, and he can have 10 minutes before halftime and 10 minutes after halftime, and he's a bull. He can,
You're a dynamite off the bench.
He can really cut a swathe through them. But if suddenly you got out there and you had a HIA to 2 of your middle forwards, and you were looking for Spencer to play even 50 or 60 minutes, he's going to get found out. He doesn't do that. He's never done that at club level. He's a powerful off-the-bench unit that can, scatter teams and make an impact. And there's a place for that if that's the risk you want to take. But then you run the risk of what happens if, and you need to cover all contingencies. It's a gamble if you go with that.
So your prop rotation is Haas, May, Barnett. So that's 2 starters and 1 on the bench. You've gone Hudson Young, Angus Crichton, Liam Martin. So there's 2 bench spots taken. So you've got to find a 14, and you've got to find another forward, I suppose.
Well, Connor Watson could play any position, and he's a perfect 14. He can play 9, he can play 13, he can play 6, he can play 7.
You happy with him staying?
Yeah, as a 14, yeah.
Hamali Olakauatu.
Yeah.
He's in, or you'd be happy if he was there? Or?
He'd be the other bench forward.
Holy, I can't believe it.
What's that?
You've just picked your forward pack, except the hooker.
My hooker?
Yeah.
That'd be Coruscant every day of the week.
He adds that extra creativity, doesn't he? Plus, if it was Cleary and Luai, there's that established grand final winning combination.
Someone asked me the other day, what did I list here?
Hang on. He's picked his Origin team on his phone.
He's
picked his Origin team on his... He picks teams in his spare time like everyone else. This is a mirage.
So, someone asked me for an opinion. Yeah. But, I haven't even counted how many I've picked there.
Well, that's the whole forward pack and the bench. Strong. We got more out of him than we thought.
And probably a Crichton or a Hudson Young becomes your outside back replacement if you need one. You'd have to weigh up the gamble of, do you keep an outside back? HIAs have changed the whole dynamic around this on the bench for your Origin, because the hardest positions to cover are your outside back injuries, because you can actually have an outside back on the bench and never get him into the game. They can't play any other position.
Yeah.
You know, I think Queensland gambled with it 1 year there and got their winger hurt in the first minute. And
Selwyn Cobbo was on the bench,
Selwyn
and
Cobbo.
everyone had bagged Billy, and within a minute he was right.
Well, we said it was a gamble, but it ended up, every now and then you back a 50-1 winner. It happens, But, if you want to play the percentages, then you need to have someone in your forward pack who can actually cover, playing in the outside backs. I remember New South Wales gambled not to have coverage in the outside backs and ended up with Damien Cook playing in the centres. Right?
Nico Hines.
Nico Hines playing in the centres. So the best way to cover an outside back, I've always found, is to have that player, that forward, who can actually hold his own as an outside back in the centres, which is not. It's not as hard today as what it used to be. Because we regularly see forwards picked as centres in NRL games. Like, there's not much difference between the edge forward and the outside back in the centres. It's just mobility and defensive awareness and et cetera. But, you've also then got to have a centre that can play on the wing, or be confident that your centre can play on the wing.
Well, Stephen Crichton will be one of the centres, so
Yeah.
he can do that.
He can do that. Your coverage for fullback. What happens if your fullback goes down? Well, Stephen Crichton can cover that, and then you go back into that sort of thing. So, yeah, you've got to cover all contingencies, and there'll always be a weak spot. There'll always be something you gamble on not covering.
Which prompts me to ask, would Matt Burton be an option on the bench instead of Connor Watson?
I don't know that Matt Burton covers your forward positions. Covers everything in the outside backs and covers everything in the halves. Doesn't cover everything in your forward positions.
He could play lock, though, couldn't he?
Well, Matt Burton is the perennial 18th man.
He is, isn't he? Yes.
He trundles off to camp, never gets a game.
He played 14 for Australia in the Pacific Championships, and how they got a run last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's the perennial, he's the perennial tourist.
So,
But he's Origin class. We know that. Matt Burton, he can play a number of positions, obviously, but if you're trying to cover all the positions in the team, I think you need to cover the output of work you need in the forwards, for middle forwards and edge forwards, and there'll be a time during the course of the game where you can actually get by without genuine front rowers. You can actually get by without them, because your back rowers can do that job during the course of the game. Not so much at the start, but certainly in the middle part of the game, they can do it.
And your yardage wingers these days as well.
Well, if you go to Brian Toto and those sort of fellas, they like having another front rower in your team anyway. But I don't see all the. If they're all fit and well, then chances are they won't be, or someone will be suspended or what have you. I think it's pretty cut and paste. I don't see what all the conjecture's about. Even with the fullback, I know Teddy's going good, but the other boy was outstanding in last year's series. He came in after they lost game one, which Tedesco played in. They won the last two games. He's a Clive Churchill medal winner. He's been in the last 4 premiership winning teams. He's got the relationship with Luai and Cleary, who are going to play in the halves, which is why I plump for Coruscant. And people worry about it getting too Pantherised. Well, that's nothing. They're all more mature players now. They've played Origin under their belt. They'll beat Queensland with that squad. They'll just beat them.
So there you go. Well, this has been a far more successful exploration than I anticipated. Gus's forward pack: Haas, Coruscant, Barnett, Young, Martin, Yeo. And the bench: Watson, Crichton, May, Olakau'atu. Good side. Want to pick the Queensland team as well?
I'd be happy with that.
I'd take that as well. 6 tackle trivia. Gus Adam Reynolds moved into second place all-time point scorers on the weekend. Pretty good effort, eh? He's only about 300 points behind Cam now.
Cleary will score over 3,000.
He'll leave them all in his dust. He scored this is Adam Reynolds. He scored 524 of those points for the Broncos. Who's the Broncos' all-time leading point scorer?
The Broncos' all-time leading point scorer.
Some thinking music, and then we're going to preview round 10.
Fans always ask, Loza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, bankers-flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Broncos all-time leading point scorer, very prominent player, played over 300 first-grade games, scored a heap of points. Well, he's actually, is he top 5? He'd be close. He's certainly top 10, ever.
Crikey. You've thrown me.
Really? Played for Queensland, played for Australia.
Top 10. Goal kicker.
Yep.
Who were the goal kickers? Lockyer didn't goal kick for that long. Mick DeVere didn't play for that long. I've had a mental block. Who was a champion goal kicker for the Broncos?
He was a forward.
A forward?
Yep.
Terry Madison.
No.
Who?
Really?
I don't know.
Corey Parker.
Oh, right. Corey Parker. There you go.
We've got him.
That should have been an easy one.
We got him. I can't believe that.
Head didn't go there.
There you are, Corey Parker. Great career. Where is he? We need to get a new screen. What? 30th? 1,300 points. He's 30th. Crikey. There you go. Let's preview round 10 thanks to the Tab. And the Tab, great supporters. The NRL season is here. For the best time in sport, Tab has the best app in sport.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Thursday night footy from Combank Stadium, Parramatta versus the Dolphins. Parramatta $1.74 favourites, Dolphins at $2.10. As I go to my little team oracle here, I can tell you that Parramatta are pretty much unchanged. Matt Dury is on the bench instead of Sam Tuivati. For the Dolphins, a double boost with Felice Kafusi back from a knee and Kurt Donahue back from an ankle. Nichols to the bench, Oren Kearley to the reserves. Jeremy Marshall-King has got another infection in that leg, so he's going to miss. They've had Max Plath out for the last few weeks, haven't they? Mm-hmm. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
So, Eel Dolphin.
Yeah. Wow. Can't explain the Dolphin.
It's funny team.
I just can't explain them. I can't explain them because they've got so many points in them and so much brilliant football, and then when it kind of falls apart, doesn't it? Parramatta Eels were very good against the Sharks. They fought their way back into contention and were a real chance of winning there halfway through the second half. Makes such a difference. Mitchell Moses back at home. Dolphins travel. It's a game Eels can win. I reckon if Jeremy Marshall-King was playing, I'd be tipping the Dolphin. But I think he's so important.
Hard to trust the Dolphins. Hard to trust both of them. Although Para last 2 weeks much improved.
They are. I'm going to go. I was actually talking to what's the coach's name?
Jason Riles.
Jason Riles. I was talking to him at Magic Round. I ran into him downstairs.
Yeah.
He's loving the experience. He's loving it.
Good.
Loving the challenge. Like really, he was really upbeat and buoyant, and he was on top of it. He's always he's a funny big fella.
When you coached him in Origin, did you see a coach in him?
No.
Because he was like a firebrand, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, he had a switch.
It's funny. It's funny players that become coaches. I mean, the new Wallaby coach has never played rugby union. Les Kiss.
Yeah.
It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but he's
Front rowers as coaches. What have we come to?
He's absolutely loving the challenge.
Good on him.
Absolutely loving it. I'm going to go home team, Eel.
Mm-hmm. You sound less than convinced.
No, well,
How can
look,
you be?
Look, when you're tipping in these games, there are some games you've just got no opinion, but you've got to have a tip, and some of them you're really confident with, and sometimes you're really confident that the underdog's going to win. Like you can just feel it. But yeah, a game like that. Bottom line is, I've got no opinion. I don't know. You know, I can see pros and cons with both sides, and then it gets down to the. You know, just how they are with their biorhythms at the moment. How is their attitude and how are they feeling? And I just think Parramatta, after a good performance against the Sharks up there in Magic Round, coming back home and, you know, wins have been hard to come by. This is one they can win. I can just see the Mitchell Moses and Dylan Brown knuckling down. I think Ayongi's getting better every week. I like Penasini. I think Bailey Simons has had a couple of games back now from his injury and going well. You know, the forward pack he's got the forward pack working hard, which is good.
You like the hooker? I like him. Riley
Smith. Yeah, Riley Smith's from Penrith.
I know.
He's a kid. He was a cricketer.
Played first grade.
Yeah, he had to make a choice between cricket. He was very young when I was at it. I think he was only 16 or 17 or something, and there was always the conjecture as to whether or not he'd play rugby league. It was he was torn between it and cricket, and there was a sense of that he was going to be a cricketer.
He's top order batsman.
Yeah, very, very good cricketer. But, yeah, so, and I don't know how he ended up at Parramatta, but he came through the Panthers system up there, and he's a beauty. He's an absolute beauty. He's got a tireless work rate, and he's the sort of player that I knew once I first saw him sort of emerging, I said, Jason Riles will love you. He'll put him straight in, so...
Well, he's solved a bit of a conundrum that they've had there in that position for a few years now.
Yeah.
Friday, 6 o'clock, game up in Newcastle. Gee, it's funny how things can change in this game of rugby league because the Knights are $1.48 favourites to... Well, they're playing the Titans. But they are at home, and Adam O'Brien has the same squad that snapped a 5-game losing streak last week. For the Titans, Jojo Fifita's back after missing Magic Round because of an arm infection. Jaden Campbell returns to take over at halfback because Tom Weaver's concussed, but he would have come back anyway. Titans lost 5 in a row.
Yes.
So Newcastle had lost 5 in a row, and they're playing against a team that is on a 5-match losing run.
Yeah, I felt like I said last week, I said this is the week for the Knights. They'll get their win and they'll start to score some tries. And they did, but they played a very, very weakened and out of form South Sydney side. You know, very weakened and very out of form. And that was able to give them some confidence. They scored a couple of tries against the Warriors a week before, and they had a couple disallowed. And I just felt like, you know, maybe they were trying to break the shackles, and there was a little bit of desperation about them. And I could just see South Sydney was a nice game to get some confidence back and get the wind in their hair and feel some long range tries and score them, which they did. And you know, Bradman Best came to the fore, and Ponga and these fellas. Are they solved? No. The issues are not solved yet, but it will be a much better week at training for them, and they'll feel some confidence, and they've scored some points, and they've had a win, etc. And they come up against this enigma of a football team, the Titans, like an absolute enigma of a football team, because
that's putting it lightly.
Their talent level just totally belies the football that they produce each weekend. They have passages of play that are out of this world. There are moments in games that are just breathtaking. Yet, on the other score of things, sometimes it's breathtaking how they let themselves down in some of the very basics and some of their defensive attitudes, etc. So, it's a really interesting... Dylan Lucas, Kai Pearce, Paul, Tyson Frizzell, Leo Thompson, Jacob Saifidi, Phoenix Crossland. I think that's good. Croker, Elliott, Brody Jones off the bench, Brayley, that's good.
Fodawaker, Campbell, Gillard, Far, Asul, Malawi.
Yeah. Look, Titans have got more points in them than the Knights. Titans have got more points in them than the Knights right at the moment. And How much confidence have the Knights been able to take out of that? What's going on at the Titans? I can't answer you. I don't know.
Campbellback's a big one.
I don't want to talk too much about it, but I don't know. Again, no result would surprise me here. But either team could win by 40 or lose by 40. Or it could be a 23-22 shootout. I think Jaden Campbell coming back is crucial. It's getting a better look about it. I don't mind young Jalen de Groot. I think the more he plays, the better he's going to get.
Jeez. He's going to tip the Gold Coast here, isn't he?
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. Tino Fasua-Malawi, crikey, what a player. There's just something not right about the Titans. And until they show it, you can't tip them. So I'm going to go with Knight.
Okay, Knight at home. Big crowd. Early game Friday. Friday night footy on 9. Rabbitohs versus the Broncos. The old coach against his old club from a core stadium. Now, he's flat out picking a team. Latrell's back. So's Jamie Humphries. Marmaz Ellis is out, so Havili's playing hooker. Jai Gray's on the bench. Fletcher Myers is into the starting team because Tass goes to the centre. Aiken goes to the second row. Now, despite being knocked around by injury, he's changed his entire front row. Jai Arrow and Kaloa Matangi have both gone to the front row. Totola's 18th man and Kepi's been dropped. And there's a big whisper that Josh Schuster might make his first appearance. With respect to Brisbane, nothing doing. But Ezra Mann's playing in the Queensland Cup.
Yeah, I can only assume that there'll be a big bounce back factor from the Broncos. You can't tip South Sydney to beat them, but the old coach, you can never trust the old coach. He's always got something up his sleeve. They won't be down and out for long. I think Humphries and Mitchell back is obviously a bonus. But Broncos, which one of them will turn up? Crikey. I will tip Adam Reynolds to lift the Bronco over Rabbit.
Okay. I think I said Sean Kepi's been dropped. He's actually on the bench and Totola's gone to 18th man. Right, let's move on to well. It's the game of the millennium. Canberra versus Canterbury. 3 p.m, GIO Stadium. No changes for Canberra. Matt Burton's back at 5'8", so Hayward to the bench, and of course Jacob Preston, represented by Phil Gould last night, got an extra game. You didn't represent him, did you?
No, I did not.
It wouldn't have helped him at all. He's out. So, Raiders are favourites in the betting with the tab $1.74 against the Bulldogs at $2.10, but the two leading teams in the competition doing battle on a, let's hope, a sunny Saturday afternoon down in Canberra.
Yep, should be great. They're a good side, the Raiders. As I said, they're fit, they're strong, they're fun. We said it right after round one. Went and watched them train in Las Vegas. We were looking at, we went across there, the chairman and I and a few of the board members of Bulldogs, to have a look at, because we want to go to Vegas. We wanted to get over and check out how it was all going. I actually saw them in a session across there, and they looked really good leading into that first game. Now, they beat the Warriors comfortably that night over there in Vegas, and the Warriors have since gone on a winning run and are one of the form sides of the competition, which shows that win was a big one, but they've beaten all and sundry since. They've just had a win over the Melbourne Storm. They're fit, they're fast, they're tough, they play for the full 80 minutes, and that's why they've had 7 wins this season. It's unfortunate that the Bulldogs are missing so many players, but as testimony to their depth, I think they're going to put a very, very competitive team on the field, and they too bounced back last week with a good win over the Titans. So, very, very interesting game.
Going to be a cracker. You going to Canberra?
No, I won't be going to Canberra.
You're getting a little cold at this time of the year.
That's not the reason I'm not going to Canberra.
Were you the mock?
No, I've got some pathway stuff to do.
Saturday, 5:30. Wynn Stadium, Wollongong. Dragons versus Warriors. Emre Gula's out, so Loko Pasifiki Tonga, who is 19 and has been part of that squad for a little while now, is going to make his NRL debut.
Have you seen him?
Big kid.
big kid.
He's got that name. You sort of think he's big.
Big kid.
He's done he's blooded some young forwards this year. Couchman, Egan, Stewart. This young lad coming into the team. Now
did you like the young halfback, Lycan Tonga?
Good player.
Yeah, he's a
Sharp.
potentially really a good player. Yeah.
And the Warriors, you talk about their winning run. James Fisher-Harris has been out for 3 weeks. So they're getting Dallin back this time for the first time in the season. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, he's been out as well. We've been forgetting all these big names that are out. Yeah. He's on the bench and might come back in.
They've been really good. I was talking to a couple of players the other day and I said, which is the best team you've played against this year? And both said the Warriors. They make it really tough for you. You know, they don't give you anything and they're working hard. Dallin Watani comes back this week. You know, they're getting players back. I've still got Kirk Capewell playing in the centres. Dragons, they just seem to be able to find clutch defeat from the jaws of victory, don't they?
Dragons $2.05, Warriors $1.77 on tab.
Warriors travelled to Brisbane last week, back to New Zealand, now across to Wollongong. It's a potential upset game, this one. Potentially an upset game. I'm liking the Warriors halves, Luke Metcalf and Chanel Harris-Tavita. Wade Egan. Aaron Clark.
Good player, eh?
What a good player, Aaron Clark. How did they let him go? Anyway, pleased to see Samuel Healy make his debut.
Every club needs an Aaron Clark.
Do they what? He's a beauty, isn't he? This is hard. I'm going to go Dragon.
Ooh.
At home. They've got to bounce back after what happened last week.
All right.
They just have. That's a game they have to win.
The other game of the millennium, 7:30 p.m. Queensland Country Bank Stadium, Townsville Cowboys up against the Panthers. Cowboys $2.35, Panthers $1.60. Sam McIntyre will start the game at lock in place of Ruben Cotter, who's suspended. Oh, geez, I miss him. For the Panthers, To'o back. Kenny back. Schneider back on the bench. Jenkins to the bench. Talau, Summerton and Guy drop out.
Yep. Interestingly, young Lauren Pataya is only emerging. It's really only Liam Henry, the forward on the bench, with any experience, isn't there? So they're asking these other fellas to play a big chunk of minutes in that game. 7:30 Saturday night. The weather shouldn't be too oppressive up there.
I suppose his thinking is he'd bring Jenkins on and move Garner into the pack.
Could possibly do. Still, Brian Totter helps Garner in the centres. There'll be plenty of opportunities for Drinkwater. The fact they got Dylan Edwards back at fullback helps the defensive organisation a hell of a lot. I think the market is an overreaction to what Panthers did, because I think Panthers stunned everyone on the weekend. They just got back to their best and just went bang and belted the Broncos. So I think the market's probably overreacted to that. I think this is a lot more even game than the market suggests there. But I think on work ethic wise and attention to detail, if the Panthers get it right, as I said earlier on, there are a few teams in this competition can live with them. I'm going to tip Panther.
Panther to win. Sunday, 2 p.m, Melbourne back at Amy Park up against the West Tigers. Now, I had a look yesterday at the tab odds and I saw $5.10 for the West Tigers and my eyes went, what? They're $4.50 now. Storm are $1.20 favourite, but this is not the same Melbourne Storm team that we've seen dominate the comp at times. Same 17 though, and it's the same 17 as well for the West Tigers.
Yep. Yes, going well, the West Tigers. At the start of the season, when you go through the draw, Melbourne in Melbourne is not one that you count as 2 points. So if you can get it, not many other teams will. It'll be a real bonus in their run towards the 8 if the Tigers can go down there. And they're kind of like that, the Tigers. They can be a real boots and all team. And I think I think this is the sort of challenge they like, where no one gives them a chance, where they're actually written off, and they're in with a much more genuine chance than what the betting suggests.
Yeah.
Right? That's,
And you experts talk about teams that move the ball around.
Yeah.
Trouble Melbourne. Well, they move it everywhere.
Well, the thing about the Tigers is they've got no fear. They've got no fear. They will go and play their brand of football. It mightn't be strategic, but they will go and play their brand of football. And what's happened is Luai has given them more of a semblance of control and calmness when things get tight, and when he thinks things need to be reined in a little bit. Not that he likes being reined in himself, but he can control the tempo of a game far better. Api Coruscant helps as well. I like the pack because it's really hard working. Right? They work hard for each other the whole game. So May, Pole, Fainu, Seyfarth, Twal, and then you get the impact of Bird and Hunt coming from the bench with Fainu. Talon De Silva is a real impact player. Still no Harry Grant for the Melbourne Storm, and that's no Harry Grant for the Melbourne Storm is becoming more and more of an issue as we can see as the weeks go by. And they're still conceding a lot of points. And if you're going to concede a lot of points, then that's going to give a huge incentive to a team like the West Tigers. It would be crazy for anyone to tip against the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne, particularly coming off a loss and with the great coach that they've got. And I don't think that I'm going to tip against them. But I'm saying West Tigers are the sort of boots and all fearless team that can go down there and gnaw away at them. And then if it gets a little bit tight at the back end of the game, they've got the flair to break it open and win. Now, Melbourne Storm this year have blown a few sides away in the first 40 minutes. Blown sides away in the first 40 minutes. They held a big lead over the Raiders and got beaten. They held a big lead over the Dolphins and got belted. They held a massive lead over Parramatta and lost the second half. They had a massive lead over the Warriors and lost the second half. Right? There are trends there that are leaking into the game, and the other part of that is no Harry Grant. No Harry Grant.
Come on. Put him out there.
What's that?
Put it out there.
What?
Go on.
Oh, I think West Tigers are in with a real shot. I really think they are. Can I tip them? Well, I don't care. I'm not in tipping competitions. I think the West Tigers will shock the hell out of Melbourne this weekend. I think they'll give them a real run for their money. And, Melbourne are going to have to be really good to beat them. Now, yeah, and the thing about Melbourne is, and the thing that Tigers will know, even if the Melbourne get out there and lead 12-0, which they quite possibly will do, even if they lead 16-0, it's not over.
No.
Right at the moment, doesn't matter how far you're in front or how far you're behind, games can change. And this is the sort of thing that I think West Tigers, they'll have absolutely no nerves, no fear, they'll have, this is where they want to be. They haven't got used to being favourites yet. They haven't got used to being good in games where they're expected to win. But they're bloody good at these ones where they're written off and no one thinks they're a chance, and they're in good form. And they played poorly the other night and still beat the Dragons. I don't think they played anywhere near their best, which is a really good sign. When a side like the West Tigers goes to a press conference and the coach is disappointed in a win, right, you know that they're getting somewhere.
Absolutely. That's a really good point.
They're getting somewhere because West Tigers wins have been few and far between the last 3 or 4 years. They celebrate anything. But when they come to a game and they beat the Dragons and they're disappointed in their performance, that shows you they're getting somewhere.
See, if they could beat Melbourne in Melbourne, the fans would be doing it.
As I say, that's 2 points no one else is going to get. And it's not cold, dreary Melbourne. It's 2:00 Sunday afternoon. Sunday specialists, the West Tigers.
Doesn't mean it won't be cold and dreary.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully not for the fans or what have you.
Go on the Tigers.
Oh, Tigers fans, get down there.
Go to Melbourne. Get on the plane.
Yeah.
Start driving now.
I'm telling you, mate.
Yeah, I reckon they're red on it.
They're going to be right into this. I'm telling you, they're going to be right into this. They'll be right in their face, and they're going to be right into it. Tigers. Tigers.
Sunday footy.
I can't wait to watch that Sunday. I'm looking forward to Sunday. Every Sunday I go and visit Mum, and we'll sit down and watch the 2 o'clock game.
Do you know, everybody likes to watch the Tigers.
Yeah. Sunday special. I've said it for 20 years on Channel, 30 years on Channel 9. Should be on every Sunday afternoon. Tigers. Sunday afternoon specialists. Particularly when they had Benji and all those boys playing.
They won 3 wooden spoons in a row. I don't know.
But I still like watching them play.
Well, I do. You do. Yeah.
I still like watching them play. Like even when those wooden spoons, there were games where there was just heartbreak. They were beaten in the last minute, or they're beaten with a field goal. They had some other days where things didn't go so good, but I actually enjoy watching them play because it's like they've got the worst memory in the world. They can't remember that they were beaten last week,
Which is probably helpful.
They just come out and play. They've got the memory of a goldfish. Honestly, they get. Look, I'd be really nervous if I'm the Melbourne Storm this week.
I'm sure they
Melbourne
are.
Storm don't get nervous. Craig Bellamy doesn't get nervous. He just expects things to happen. But I'm telling you what, Tigers are right in their face this Sunday.
He vanished under the desk on Sunday, Craig Bellamy.
Craig.
Yep. Sunday footy.
I don't know how he does it.
4 Pines, Brookvale. What a game. Gee, it's a good round, isn't it?
Yeah.
Manly versus Sharkies. Manly back at home. Jason Saab, Jake Trebojevic back. Jake's playing prop. Charles Tavunga's staying at lock. Ethan Bullimore moves to the bench. Tommy Talau goes to the interchange after playing on the wing for the last 3 games. And Josh Aloiai can't get his shoulder right, so he's still unavailable. And Daniel Atkinson comes back after being 18th man last week for Sifa Talakai.
Mm-hmm.
Neither team has been convincing this year.
No, the Battle of the Beaches. No, there's sort of been good. It's, the one thing about the Sharks, I can't actually say that the Sharks have been great at any stage this year. Like it's not as like where Manly have been. There have been passages of games where Manly have been outstanding, absolutely phenomenal, and they've had some other periods where they've been really poor. But Sunday afternoon, Brookvale Oval, sorry, what have I got to call it? Four Pines.
4 Pines Brookie, I call it.
4 Pines Brookie.
See, because when they changed it to 4 Pines Park, I realised no one knows where the bloody hell that is. So everyone knows where Brookie is. So 4 Pines Brookie.
4 Pines Brookie.
Yep.
So, yeah, good game. Sharks still haven't found their best yet, I don't think. I don't think at any stage this year Sharks have actually been at their best or what I think they're capable of. And I don't know why. I can't put my finger on why. They've been competent. They're winning games, but they're probably losing a couple I didn't expect them to lose, and sometimes their wins aren't that convincing. Yeah. Manly at Brookvale on Sunday afternoon will do me.
Turbo second up from a spell.
Yeah, so I'm going to go for Eel to beat Dolphin. I'm going to go for, who did I go for? Knight to beat Titan. Bronco to beat Rabbit. It'd be a good game, the Raider. And then Dragon to beat Warrior. Panther to beat Cowboy. I'm on the Tigers. I'm on the Tigers.
He's tipped the Tigers.
I'm on the Tigers.
Yes. $4.50 with the tab. And then I should have mentioned Manly $1.70, Sharks $2.15.
Manly $1.70. Yeah, that's about right. So I'm on Manly. I'm on Manly.
Very good.
I don't know if the Tigers can beat Melbourne in Melbourne.
But you'll be hoping.
I know that the Tigers think they can. Tigers won't care.
That's what matters.
They'll just get down there and play their footy, mate. They won't care. They will honestly think they can win the game, and that's half the battle against Melbourne. I don't know that Melbourne are good enough or going good enough to justify that price. Tiger.
This has been a very fun hour and a half. You've been up and about.
We've been here for an hour and a half, have we?
Yeah.
What did we learn today?
We learnt your New South Wales forward pack. We learnt something about David Fifita. What else did we learn? Petro Civoniceva saved your life.
Petro saved my life in Suva. I'd have never found that hotel.
I can't believe he just emerged.
He just come out of the woodwork.
Did you think you're having an out-of-body experience?
I got the
Did you
photo
think,
to
is that
prove it.
Petro Civoniceva?
Well, put it this way, there was a lot of big Fijians in Fiji. So to actually see one I recognised was really nice. He just kind of walked around the corner. I thought, yeah. He said, no, I'll
Petro, is that
drive
you?
He said, you won't need this car, will you? I don't think he had a car. He said, I said, no. He said, you can keep it. So he drove the car for the whole week.
One of the great men. I'll see you at the footy. Oh, yes. Happy Mother's Day to all the mums this Sunday, and happy Mother's Day to your mum when you go visit her.
Do you think there are mothers listening to this podcast?
Absolutely. You are very popular amongst the mothers.
Listening to the podcast. There are mothers listening to the podcast.
There would be mothers everywhere.
My mother wouldn't know what a podcast was.
Neither do you. Thank you. I look forward to your company at the footy Thursday, Friday, Sunday on 9, and Origin 3 weeks away today. See you next week.